believe that Bitcoin is the most, BTC is the most well-known cryptocurrency, and something which is easy for the average consumer to understand. It's something that gets a lot of media attention, good and bad. And so we think that project is going to be a dominant part of a decentralized economy in the future, but we think that there is a role for lots of other projects to contribute and to have useful functions as well. And I guess the community and the users will ultimately decide on which ones make it and which ones don't.
Hello and what's up, everybody? You're listening to Africa's #1 podcast in technology and business. But before we get started with today's subject, I would just like to do a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who like to listen to the Grey Av simply because of cryptocurrency subjects, there's a lot of crypto-related activities that I'm actually putting together. So for you to keep updated, I actually suggest that you sign up to the newsletter or subscribe to the podcast through my website, www.greybtc.com. And you can also follow me on social media at GreyBTC, GreyBTC. And then you can keep up to date with what's going on in the crypto sphere. And there is also some material that I'm preparing, which I'll be able to share with anyone who is subscribed to that newsletter. Back to today's episode, I have the incredible Llew Classen over here. And I had a fun conversation with him. It was short but sweet. Some of you already know who Llew is. Among some of the subjects that we discuss here, I asked him exactly what is he holding in his portfolio. We also discussed his stand on the current Bitcoin situation with the forks going on with Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, and so forth. And what is he holding among those? His answer was very interesting to me. And we talk about how do you assess and value coins or tokens in this ecosystem, and his price prediction for 2019 and the investment side of things as well, because he is a managing partner of Newtown Partners, which I'll get to that just now. But, there are things that they're investing in or they're looking into. So he was able to share a little bit more about that, and including some of the projects that he is excited about that they've invested in. So to give you a little bit of a clue, Llew is the managing partner of Newtown Partners, a blockchain investment and advisory service firm founded by him and Vinny Lingham. Newtown Partners specializes in token economics, token cell design, and demand generation for both their portfolio of startups and in an advisory capacity. They operate out of offices in San Francisco, United States, and Cape Town, South Africa. Llew also co-founded Clicks to Customers, which was later rebranded to www.nmpdigital.com with Vinny Lingham, now with a global digital marketing agency with annual billings in excess of $100 million. And Synthesite, which was also rebranded to Yola.com. Llew is also the executive director of the Bitcoin Foundation, the original, oldest, and the largest Bitcoin advocacy organization globally, headquartered in San Francisco, United States. So there's a lot I can say here, but I think that gives you guys a little bit of a clue of what Llew is all about. Oh, did I just rhyme with that? Anyway, hey, let's get to the conversation, and please share this on your social media to get a lot more friends and family to hear about it. Otherwise, stay productive. I'll see you on the other side. So here we are. Nice to finally have you here. Do you want to just introduce yourself to those who do not know who you are?
Yeah. Sure. I'm Llew Classen. I'm the executive director of the Bitcoin Foundation, and I'm the managing partner at Newtown Partners, which is a blockchain investment and advisory services company operating out of the US, in California, and out of Cape Town, South Africa.
Right. So what do you mean when you say Bitcoin Foundation? Is it Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Core?
Could you give me an easier question? No, I'm kidding. Our view is that we believe that everybody should contribute to the growth of this ecosystem in whichever way they think is responsible and where their contribution is most valued. And the nature of consensus in decentralized networks is that sometimes you have disagreements about what the right approach to take is. Conversely, because you effectively create stronger network effects when you work together, I think we're going to find that it's going to become more and more compelling for people to work through their differences rather than create chain splits, because it is really hard to get to scale once you've split the chains. And I think in the case of, for example, Bitcoin Cash going through another fork, you have the same kind of issue. We believe that Bitcoin is the most, BTC is the most well-known cryptocurrency and something which is easy for the average consumer to understand. It's something that gets a lot of media attention, good and bad. And so we think that project is going to be a dominant part of a decentralized economy in the future, but we think that there is a role for lots of other projects to contribute and to have useful functions as well. And I guess the community and the users will ultimately decide on which ones make it and which ones don't.
Mm-hmm. So I had an interview with Lauren Governor about this very issue. He now believes that Bitcoin SV is the real Bitcoin, in the sense that there are a couple of things that have happened to Bitcoin BTC that might lead to its demise over time. He said that you can overbid transactions, basically you can be double spent. I don't know. What's your knowledge on that? What do you think?
So, I mean, I think that getting into the specifics of a technical question without having some time to having worked through why, as I mentioned before, it's really just a question of there are different technological solutions to these specific problems. People have disagreements about how to do these things. It happens in BTC all the time. It's actually very difficult to achieve social consensus in a decentralized network. And so I think that you're always going to have a situation where people that are even working on the same project are going to disagree about the right way forward. And I think that it's difficult to say with certainty what the true impact is going to be of some of these choices. But I think that what we'll find is it is possible that network effects will play a really important role in that as well. Why I mention that is that once you have a network at scale, once again, we're going to find that people are heavily incentivized to continue working on the same project rather than create a fork, which is difficult to get to the same level of scale. Which one will win? We won't know. It's not even certain that BTC and its roadmap is the only possible, desirable, and successful roadmap. But that project does have scale, and there are lots of smart people working on that project. In the same way, there are lots of smart people working on other projects that are not direct competitors to Bitcoin. And I think that we won't know what is the right solution until we have sufficient adoption. And once we understand what people are trying to build and what infrastructure or lower level technology is needed in order to build on. So it's the same conversation we could have about whether or not Bitcoin should, whether or not Lightning Network solves Bitcoin's layer 2 challenges, or rather its scalability challenges and transaction cost challenges. And it's certainly one way of achieving that objective. As to whether or not, it's definitely not the only way. And we're not certain at this point in time whether it is the best way. But that particular community took a decision to go down that road. And I think it's good to test.
Mm-hmm. So if you had to speak not for the foundation, personally, in your portfolio, you don't hold any Bitcoin Cash or SV?
I can't really talk about what I hold and don't hold.
Skin in the game, man.
I think that, we're always going to be holding cryptocurrencies that we think represent projects that we believe give us a good indication of what that future is like and to support people doing useful work. But as to which projects those are and which one, how much of Bitcoin I hold versus Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin SV, I don't think that's not really a helpful indicator of which one is the dominant one or which one do I prefer.
No, I was just trying to get to what you prefer. What are your beliefs in these differences now? It's a lot more confusing to the average person already when they're coming into the space now.
let's just say the best strategy is to buy and hold.
Okay.
Or to let it fork and hold.
Okay, so Lorian also had a point on that. He said hodling is not the best strategy anymore, because if you believe that a certain cryptocurrency will be the future, then probably you should do something about it, like share it, to the world. Then that's where we're going to get adoption.
You're right, but at that point in time, you're picking a winner, and right now it's too early to pick a winner, in my view.
So right now things are a little more clear, I think, as compared to the last time we were at Startup Grind in 2017. Bitcoin was 18,000. Everyone made money, even from investing into like some ridiculous cryptocurrencies. At this point, things are changing now. It's becoming more clear who is real and who's not. What are the things that you look at when one is assessing these assets and want to invest into?
I think that the easiest starting point for us is that where do we believe permissionless, trustless, and decentralization has the biggest impact on moving something into a space which is more compelling to users than what is possible today. And I think that I'm also not necessarily fixating on a specific blockchain or a specific technology, but rather going, if we believe that certain blockchains will be more capable of supporting certain use cases, more capable of enabling application development on top of them, then they're probably, and then combine that with sort of the size of the opportunity or that they're trying to address, then that would give us a good indication of like which ones are at least targeting a really big problem that is currently underserved or which can be served better. And so we do have, as I said earlier on in my talk, so we do have certain sectors that we believe are most ripe for disruption. I think that our view on it is blockchain is not in and of itself disruptive enough, but rather that it is a foundational technology that you use together with other emerging technologies in order to create truly disruptive solutions. So at that point in time, I don't have to make decisions about whether or not it's one blockchain or another blockchain. I have to make decisions about which sector and how big that TAM is and what is being addressed and what is the feature set that is designed to serve that use case, and then sort of working it back down in terms of application, and then at a protocol level, what is useful. So I think now if that sounds like a little bit, well, how could you possibly know? It's so early days, and that is kind of the point, is that I think that we don't yet know. I think that it's a key indicator for me is the strength of the community and the size of the community and the supporting infrastructure that's already been developed. And I think there, for example, Ethereum is particularly strong around developing standards that enable you to build on top of Ethereum.
Yeah.
But there are other projects that are also doing very interesting things. And I think that another key thing for me is that has the community ever had to achieve some kind of consensus about what to do going forward, which gives you a good indication of like, is this thing likely to last beyond just its first major disagreement?
Right. And lastly, we have to talk about what have you seen in terms of governments or institutions trying to get into it, especially in the African region. What have you seen from the institutional point of view or government point of view, whether they're willing to work with blockchain, or is it still unclear how they?
I think, to be honest, I think there was more interest in the technology in 2018 than there is in 2019, but I think there is still, even when I say technology, I mean actually about the cryptocurrency use case, and trying to understand the role that was going to be playing. I think that there is a perception right now that it was a failed experiment, or insofar as the cryptocurrency use case is concerned. And so I think a lot of the focus at the moment is on how do you use permission ledgers to serve backend infrastructure use cases. I think that's actually a fairly weak use of the technology, and I think that we will, but I guess we'll see how it goes. I think that public blockchains, in the same way that public internet protocols won out, I think we'll see the same thing with public blockchains.
And obviously we have to ask about your 2019 prediction. What do you think?
Price of the rand is going to be, no, just kidding. No, I don't like to do price predictions. Do you know why? Because once upon a time, at the end, exactly like this, at the end of a talk that I did, somebody asked me, so what do you think the price is going to be at the end of this year? It was actually Startup Grind in California. And I had a whole long explanation for how I got to that number, and then I gave the number. And the only thing that was picked up in that and in subsequent stories was the number. No context for how we got to that number. And so it's still quite funny because you read about how I predicted that Bitcoin would be $40,000 by the end of 2018 without any context. And more importantly, I think that price predictions, and I know they're sometimes just fun, but they're also dangerous because when people are just getting into the industry and they hear that they could buy something for $3,900 and it's going to go to, say, for example, $20,000 or $40,000, they're like, hell's yeah, I'm going to put my life saving into this thing. And that's just dangerous. So I don't think speculative buying behavior is useful for anybody, especially not people who are not sophisticated and haven't been in the industry for a while. And I don't actually think it gives us any indication, especially not short-term price movements, of like the utility of the technology. I think in the long term, it reflects the instrument's ability to capture the value that has been created inside the network. So there's no doubt that in the long term, you want something that tends to increase in value given its deflationary nature. But in the short term, it's a volatile instrument because what it's pricing is effectively the utility and the value of the network. And that's very difficult to do until you've got fundamental use happening in the network. Right now, we're kind of playing around, testing things. There are no protocols at scale. There are no projects at scale at the application level. So it's actually very difficult to even determine what is the fundamental use of any given blockchain, which is why it's very hard to value these things.
So what does your day-to-day life look like? Just travel and talk with the foundation?
I did way too much of that last year. This year I'm trying to do a lot less of that. And I'm focusing more of my attention on the investment side, particularly emerging technologies that work well with blockchain and looking for startups that are trying to do very interesting things in that space.
No exchanges?
We looked at a few. We thought very deeply about it at the beginning.
Is this part of the Bitcoin Foundation or this is
your Newtown Partners?
Okay.
So the investment side. Exchanges, they're actually very difficult to get sufficient liquidity into them. There is a lot of market abuse that happens. It's very difficult to stamp out completely the market abuse. It's very competitive. So we do have some friends that either do operate exchanges or have operated exchanges, and they always tell us stay away from it. And I think just because it's a really hard business and you're constantly under attack. Because you're a big honeypot with a lot of cash, at least in a centralized form. In a decentralized form, there's lots of other complexity that still needs to be worked through. So, for us, it's more a question of rather than how do we take advantage of things that everybody else is taking advantage of, like how do we invest into things that are advancing the industry, doing innovative things. So like even when we were looking at exchange investments and we were kind of going, how do we don't want to invest into a clone of Binance or a clone of Coinbase or that's not interesting. We're more interested in at that point in time, we were super interested in DEXs, but we were also interested in sort of things that can trade other kinds of instruments. We were continue to be very involved in a crypto derivatives exchange in Gibraltar. So I think there's no doubt that liquidity is a core feature set of crypto assets, and without that liquidity, they are less useful. But our exchange is a good investment right now? Probably not.
Okay, and so what have you invested so far that's like you're excited about?
There's sort of two projects that I spent a lot of time on recently that get me excited. Number one is Civic, because I think that digital identity is a big problem. Self-sovereign and true identity. And I think that blockchain lends itself very well to that application. I think our experience with Civic and my business partner's time there shows us that it's actually a really hard problem to crack, and that financial services is not actually the easiest market entry point. which it might seem obvious, but it's not. So digital identity is something that we are very excited about, and it's a really big problem. And if we can crack it, I think that that is definitely something that's worthwhile doing, and will create really large businesses, or at least very large utilities. And another project that I'm very interested in and spend a lot of time with is a mobile game called Augmentors, which is an augmented reality player versus player game. And why that's interesting is that it gives us a lot of time to think about the nature of non-fungible tokens, and what they truly represent more broadly in an economy, and also because you can test lots of things about microeconomies in a game context. And so, and also just because gaming is fun.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a project. So I think it's a mix of kind of like things that are solving deep problems and are actually hard to crack, and then things that are frankly just creating user applications to move the use of the underlying protocols forward.
Awesome, Llew. Thank you so much for your time.
Cool.
I appreciate it. Hello once again, and that was the end of our conversation. And just before you go, just want to communicate a few things with you quickly. If you have enjoyed any of the podcasts or this specific podcast episode, I would appreciate it if you share it with your friends and family through your social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., as well as write me a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcast app. That would be fantastic. It helps me flourish and sustain this podcast as well. We also on other platforms like SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and all other major podcast platforms. So whichever way you're listening to it, I would appreciate it if you leave me a review. You can also subscribe to the Grey Podcast through my website, greyjabesi.com, greyjabesi.com. There you also find some of the blogs that I'm writing sometimes, and you get notified as soon as the new episode has been published. Until next time, enjoy and be productive. Thank you.